It's been 5 years that I'm working on this project about African migration in Europe. I ask myself a lot of times, what is that attracts me? I actually think that migration as the primordial state of the human beings that want to move forward and want to explore things, want to evolve and contribute to different cultures and blend with different cultures. And that's the way I try to present it in my project.
Ja, das waren die Worte von Alisa Martynova, einer russischen Dokumentarfotografin. Aufgenommen haben wir dieses Gespräch, das sind Thomas B. Jones und ich, am Rande der Medientage des letztjährigen Fotofestivals La Gacilly Baden Foto, das unter dem Motto Orient stand. Wir haben dort reichlich Interviews aufgenommen, einige davon sind bereits veröffentlicht, hör da gerne mal rein. Einige Aufnahmen schlummern noch im Archiv und werden jetzt in den kommenden Wochen nach und nach veröffentlicht. Heute also das Gespräch mit Alisa Martynova und über Alisa heißt es im Festivalkatalog: Alisa Martynova stammt aus Russland und lebt in Italien, wo sie Fotografie studierte. Seit 2018 beschäftigt sich Martynova mit dem Thema Migration, insbesondere mit den Menschen, die über das Mittelmeer nach Italien kommen. Eine Studie der Internationalen Organisation für Migration aus dem Jahr 2016 benennt die wichtigsten Fluchtursachen, darunter mangelnde Sicherheit, kriegerische Konflikte, sexuelle, gesellschaftliche oder religiöse Diskriminierung. Die Zahlen sind erschreckend. Allein 2021 kamen auf dem Mittelmeer über 4.400 Migranten ums Leben. Sie kommen aus Nigeria, Gambia oder der Elfenbeinküste. Für viele von ihnen endet der Traum in Libyen, wo Folter, Sklaverei und Vergewaltigung zum Alltag gehören. Wer es über das Mittelmeer schafft, kämpft weiter mit der Angst, die Flucht und die Gefahren auf der Reise ausgelöst haben. Auf der Suche nach einem Ort, an dem sie leben und sich niederlassen können, reisen sie im Verborgenen. Jeder dieser Menschen hat seine eigene Geschichte und sein Antlitz, doch alle verbindet ein gemeinsames Schicksal. Alle sind junge Afrikaner, die sich Individualität und Diversität bewahrt haben, im Strudel der Globalisierung jedoch oft vergessen werden. Nach der langen Passage über das Meer werden sie zu Sternen, die in der Nacht vergehen und ein Sternbild formen. In ihren Unterschieden und Ähnlichkeiten verkörpern sie alle einen Traum, einen gemeinsamen Horizont, für dessen Erreichen jeder bereit ist, einen kleinen Teil von sich selbst aufzugeben. Heute leben über 1 Million Afrikaner legal in Italien. So viel zum Hintergrund von Alisa Martynova. Du hörst sie gleich am Beginn dieser Episode auch nochmal in ihren eigenen Worten, wie sie beim Artist Walk, also dem Rundgang mit allen Fotografen durch die Ausstellung vor ihren Bildern steht und über ihr Projekt Nowhere Near spricht. Das ist dann auch Gegenstand im daran anschließenden Interview, das wir mit ihr im Hotel geführt haben. Ja, dann würde ich sagen, lass uns direkt einsteigen in das Interview mit Alisa Martynova. Viel Spaß!
It's your turn. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Alisa Martynova. I hope I pronounced it correct.
You do. Thank you. Well, hello everyone. It's great to see you here. And my exhibition is called Nowhere Near. I'll closely explain the title to you. And the project is about African migration in Europe, and it was made both in Italy and France through the years. And it's an ongoing project, so it will continue. And the thing that I decided to work on is mostly the feeling of how it is to be a migrant rather than a news story, because there were already very good photographers who worked on this in the reportage race. So I decided to approach the story in a different way. So I spent a lot of time without actually taking the pictures, just talking to people, talking to the migrants and the people who work with them. And at some point, one of them told me this very interesting thing, and they told me that when they migrated and when they tried to settle in Italy, they felt themselves in sort of a bubble, in a cultural bubble and linguistic bubble, because they didn't know the language, they didn't know the sort of the behavioral norms of society, and sometimes their friendly behavior towards other people was interpreted in the opposite way. And I decided to see how I could represent this feeling of being in in a bubble, but through photography and in a way that could touch many people, could touch different people who even never had the experience of migration. And at this point, I thought of the metaphor of the stars and interstellar travel. So the project stands on these 2 feet. One is the African culture. So you could see it in colors, you could see it in clothing, you could see it in the elements, in the recurring elements of the project. But the other part is this feeling, is this, again, this sort of dream about the stars guiding your way through, because, again, a lot of traveling is happening at night. And here comes the title, Nowhere Near, which in English is actually expresses this state, which is a non-state, fill-in that is a non-fill-in, and place that is a non-place, which is very important in the understanding of this feeling. It's a very controversial combination of different feelings being a migrant. So I thought that that metaphor could combine all of them. And one of the inspirations was also the dreams of these people, because I asked them about their recurring dreams, if they had any strange dreams that came at night. Because again, while talking to them, I tried not to speak straightforwardly about the experience of crossing, but mostly again about speaking about their dreams or their home country. So you could see a lot of landscapes were inspired by the visions of the dreams of these people, and also by their home country. So that by the landscapes that might have been found in their home country. And what else can I say? A lot of pictures are symbols. So again, and I was trying to bring this symbology of African culture, a tradition, and this feeling of being a migrant. So this connection to the stars. And again, migration seen as a primordial feeling and as a primordial state of human beings, because again, it's something that's been forgotten very often. But the human beings, they always travel, they always migrate, and that's how the cultures evolved, and that's a natural state of a human being. And so that's something that, again, through this connection to the stars and to this African traditions, which are very much connected to earth and natural elements, I tried to represent in the project. And for example, you could see that that picture of a desert rose, that's sort of a perfect symbol of combining these two traditions. Because this is a crystal that can be found in the arid conditions, where sometimes migrants come from, like in countries like Libya. But then it also resembles this sort of an interstellar body, so a crystal. And then the stories of different people. I tried to approach different people with different stories, different backgrounds, different countries. So they're not only the migrants who came by sea, but also the migrants who came for economical reasons. And again, the colors, for example, the choice of colors, there's a lot of red, because in African traditions, red is considered both as a color that stands for danger and death and blood, but also for courage. And again, that's something that I wanted to manifest in the project, that these people have a lot of courage and a lot of power and a lot of force to undertake the journey that is, again, perilous, full of uncertainties, full of being nowhere. And I think it's great to manifest the culture and the courage of those people. Thank you.
Thank you, Alisa, for sharing this with us.
Ja, das war Alisa Martynova in ihren eigenen Worten, ein paar Worte über ihr Projekt Nowhere Near, das sie beim vergangenen Festival La Gassili Baden Foto gezeigt hat. Außerdem hast du Lois Lammerhuber gehört, den Festivaldirektor von Europas größtem Open-Air-Fotofestival. Jetzt geht es weiter mit dem Gespräch, das Thomas B. Jones und ich anschließend geführt haben, indem wir die Thematik ihres Projekts Nowhere Near vertiefen und auch darauf eingehen, warum Migration zu dem Kernfokus ihrer fotografischen Arbeit geworden ist. Viel Spaß! Okay, Alisa, let's get started. Thank you very much for taking the time for this interview.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, we're here at the photo festival in Baden. Yesterday, we went on the tour to see all the exhibitions here of all the artists and also your exhibition here, Nowhere Near. Before we talk about that and what's about this body of work, Alisa, I'd like to ask, how did you get started with photography in the first place? When did you discover that taking pictures was your way of telling stories?
Right. Thank you. Well, actually, when I was at school in Russia, because I was born in Russia and raised there, and I used to act in a theater, but it was an experimental theater. So we worked a lot with image and movement, not words, but metaphors and symbolic representation of things. And I had a friend of mine who wanted to be a photographer, and at some point I like by acting in theater, I was thinking about becoming actually a theater director. And at some point I was with this friend of mine who just recently bought the camera, and she asked me to take a picture of hers. And when I took the camera in my hands, I thought that it actually felt like directing. So it felt like staging, and it felt like very much connected to theater, very much connected to, poetry of the moment. And yeah, I think that was my first taste of photography. And then again, when I was quitting theater at my university, and I wanted to be a film director. So I had a lot of ideas. And at the moment I was watching a lot of films, and I was actually very much into films, into filmmaking. And accidentally I was planning to have a workshop in Prague in filmmaking. And I just had some spare money and some spare time, and just decided that okay, I'll just travel somewhere else. And I chose Italy. And I accidentally chose Florence because Rome was too big for me. And there I took a course in darkroom photography. And that was the moment when I fell in love with photography, because it seemed magic. And it seemed alchemy. It was very material. It was very much something that you would do with your hands, like developing and printing photographs in the darkroom. And I felt that there was a lot of potential in it, and just felt it was, and also comparing to filmmaking, it was much easier because you didn't have to have a big crew. You didn't have to have expensive equipment to do it. So I just, at first it was just a chance, just this random encounters. And then when I applied for a photography program in Florence, that's just how it started. And I'm still here.
Are you still using analog cameras in your photography?
Not really, because now it's just for the question of conveniency. Just I used to shoot with analog camera on my first and second year in photography school. And it taught me a lot. I really liked it. I really liked the alternative processes of printing. And I really like the way analog photography teaches you to choose the subject and to be slow in taking the picture. And it gets you, it just gives you the responsibility, or it makes you aware of the responsibility of making a shot, right? Because you only have limited number of frames. And yeah, but then I switched because I started to work with artificial lighting, and it was just easier in the beginning to work with artificial lighting because you could see result immediately. And then I just continued, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, once you found your medium into, photography as your way to express your whatever you wanted to say, then the question is, what kind of stories do you want to tell? How did you get to find your subjects, the things that you wanted to point your camera at?
It's an interesting question because I ask myself about it and I don't really find the answer. But it has something to do with how I started photography and how I approached art in the beginning. Because again, I went through theater, I went through films, and only that I went to photography. And in the beginning, when I was making photography, I was very personal. So I was talking about myself and about my feelings. And when I went on, and on the second year of school, we had this approach to the documentary photography. So that's where I sort of switched, and I thought that, and at some point you can't talk about yourself anymore because, I mean, unless there's something in there, or, I mean, there are many good photographers who do it, but that was just not for me. And, but still, by speaking about other people, I feel that I somehow speak about myself, and or at least about things that I don't maybe fully understand in the beginning, or something that I would like to come closer to, something that something that helps me to understand more about the world I live in, something that connects me to different people, something that I don't know. It's just it's interesting because like doing photography and art in general, it's about it's a relationship with your mind as well, like with something that interests your mind, and you don't always know why it is that. So sometimes it's just subconscious. And in the topic of migration, for example, because it's been 5 years that I'm working on this project about African migration in Europe. And I ask myself a lot of times, what is that attracts me? And I actually think that the way migration and the story of migration is the ultimate thing about the human being, like it's the ultimate state of human beings. And that's the way I try to present it in my project, like migration as the primordial state of the human beings that want to move forward and want to explore things, want to evolve and contribute to different cultures and blend with different cultures. So I think right when I was trying to find like what is my main interest in photography, and I came to this reflection that it's actually about the universal themes. Just that's through photography I try to get to the core of how the world works and functions, and that's what I find fascinating about it, because photography gives you this opportunity.
Yeah, right. With migration, it's a quite wide topic, and once you've identified your interest in this topic, you have to find an angle to tackle it and to translate it into images that represent your idea of your point of view, how you want to, what you want to tell about the migration and the topic of migration. How did you go about that to narrow it down to a concept that now can be seen in your series Nowhere Near?
Right. Well, that was, I spent a lot of time without taking pictures. So I was just talking to people. I was reading a lot. I was watching films. I was reading articles and books. And I was just trying to explore the topic from all the different sides of it. And that's how I usually approach the new project. I just really do a very deep research. And while I was talking to people, I talked to migrants a lot, of course, and to the people who work with them, like psychologists and the people who help them in the reception centers and journalists. And from the conversation of... I had this conversation with one of the migrants, and he told me that when he moved to Italy, he had this feeling of being in a bubble, like cultural bubble and linguistic bubble. And because some of the behavioral norms of the society, which is a strange thing to say, but they were different. And when he was trying to approach people in a friendly way, he was misinterpreted. And the story of migration is a lot about time, about waiting, about being in this sort of suspended place in a limbo almost. And that's when I decided, from following all this conversation, I decided to focus on that feeling of being a migrant, because that's also something that was missing in the main narrative. Then there was a lot of very good photojournalistic work on the matter, which informs people. But at some point, what happens with the subject, and it happened a lot of times in the history of photography, with war photography, for example, when spectators and readers, when they are sort of bombarded with all this very, very crude, very violent images, at some point it serves the point that it informs, and it is very important to have this kind of narrative. But at some point in time, it creates a barrier between the spectator and, the receiver of the imagery and the subject. And it doesn't work anymore to create a connection. And that is something that was important for me in my work. I wanted to create the connection between the people who never went through the experience of migration and between the people who had this experience. And that's why I chose the metaphor of the interstellar travel. And because it's like, if you think about the space, it's the ultimate metaphor of the controversial feelings, right? Of being nowhere near, because the title of the project, Nowhere Near, it's exactly something that notes the feeling, which is a non-feeling, and the place, which is a non-place. And then if you think about the space, it's something that makes us feel fascinated, but it's also something that makes us feel scared. It's the ultimate metaphor of the unknown, of the future, but also about the past, because it's where everything comes from, right? So, and that's something that I felt was very true for the migration, because a lot of people were speaking about these controversial feelings of being, they're following a dream, but they don't know what is in there, what is in there for them. They have their past, they have their traditions and have their roots. But at some point, they also, in the new environment, they reject their roots sometimes, or they try to manifest their roots. So it's always a very complex feeling. It's a very complex phenomena. And what is the most complex thing in the world? Probably the world itself. So that's why I decided to connect it to space.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Interesting that you say that in the first place, there was quite some time that you spent without touching the camera, just doing some investigation, talking to people, and then developing an idea of what the project eventually is gonna look like. It's been quite a long way to get to the point where you actually took the first image.
Right, because it's the stereotype, because everybody thinks that photographers they take images all the time, and they always have the camera hanging from their neck. But and it's true for some kind of photographers, and it's good for their practice. But on my way, I feel that I very much need the research, and I actually need to. Some pictures, they become intuitively, but they still follow the concept. And I don't know, it's a very mysterious thing with photography and with projects in general, because you never know when. You are looking for something, right? But you don't know what you find, and you don't know at which point you will find it. And then your brain, at least as I understand my brain works, it just gathers a lot of information and then it makes connections. And I can't predict what the connection will be in the beginning, but I really need this time of the research. And even I also need the time when I did the research and then I stop and I just leave it there. And then when my mind is free, it is free to make the connections with the things that matter. And I think that's just how it works.
And the project was done, all the images of the projects were taken in Italy, or where was it?
Some pictures were taken in Italy, some pictures were taken in France, because in Italy I worked in Tuscany. So again, I didn't go to the place where the migrants actually arrive, because I was mostly interested in the feeling of being a migrant. So it was a contemplative research, and mostly constructing the world through the narratives and taking the metaphors and symbols from the stories. And then when I finished the project in Italy, I was selected for a artist in residency program in Deauville in Planche Contact Festival, and that's how I continued the project in Normandy. But then again, I didn't. Again, in Normandy, I didn't go to Calais, but I was working around, and I was working with even established migrants. And then that's how I found out this question of origins, that some of them were actually rejecting their origins and they wanted to become European, French, because they wanted to blend with a new environment. And some of them were actually manifesting their origins. So a lot of the imagery, they come from the research again, because I was asking a lot of people about their recurring dreams, about their home country. So all the landscape, they sort of embody this process of speaking about the space, but also speaking about the earth, the African culture, and being very, very connected to nature, and then the travel and the seaside. So I was just trying to sort of create an imagery. So it wasn't actually important where I was, but the people were important, and it's mostly I was. It's a very interesting thing, because when I was back in Russia, I studied at university and I studied philology, and I wrote my thesis on romanticism and romantic poetry. And there's a very interesting thing in there, that landscape in poetry, in romantic poetry, works as a mirror of the soul and feelings of the main character. And this is something that I wanted to bring to this work about migration. Like, again, it's not a reportage, right? But it's more, or it could be a reportage, but about thoughts and the inner landscape that the people have inside. And that was somehow the representation of the feelings, like the visual representation of the feelings.
Interesting. Where can people find or see the images on your website, or what is the best place to have a visual impression of what we're talking about?
Right. You can go to my website or Instagram because that's the place where the pictures live now. And I'm quite happy that the project is still traveling, and I will be heading for a new part in the UK, and in September actually the project will be exhibited again in Kuala Lumpur, then in Helsinki, and then I'm really happy that it actually lives, and people can have a chance to see it live, not only in the internet, because I also feel that the projects, they need to be seen live in reality, because that's a different thing, because it also helps to establish the relationship with the photograph and the subject on the photograph and the spectator. It's a very different experience from the website, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a very, very unique way of tackling this this topic of migration, the way you did it in your series, with lots of thoughts in them, and to kind of abstract it a little bit from the images that we are used to see about portraying migrants and what they are going through.
Right.
So to use metaphors and to put it into a broader spectrum, and so that it's relatable to all of us, because these interstellar journeys and all the fundamental questions that we are asking ourselves of where we are going, and so it's all within us, so we can relate to it.
Right. Yeah, that's I think exactly what I was trying to work on. So I'm happy that it actually feels.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alisa. It was a pleasure to see your work here, get in contact with it, and then have the chance to talk about it with you. All the best of luck for
Thank you.
your future projects, and thank you very much again.
Thank you very much. It was great to talk to you. Thank you for your questions.
Ja, das war das Interview mit Alisa Martynova, aufgenommen am Rande der Medientage des vergangenen Fotofestivals La Cassili Baden Foto, und weitere Interviews nicht nur von der letztjährigen Ausgabe von Europas größtem Fotofestival, sondern auch von den vorherigen findest du im Archiv bei Gate 7. Hör da gerne auch nochmal rein. Vielen Dank fürs Zuhören und auf bald. Dein Kai.